A while back, I talked about some of the most delusional takes out there in regards to Nintendo Switch and the company as a whole. And one of the things I pointed out was that Donkey Kong fans are trying to paint the franchise as Nintendo's new neglected IP. Now that Metroid, Star Fox, and F-Zero have all gotten new entries in the past several years, it's time for something else to be put in the forefront. It's time for something else to whine and complain about not getting enough support. And what seems to be happening is that people have been trying to use Donkey Kong, right? This is the 10-year anniversary of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and instead of talking about what a great game it is and how wonderful it is that we got it to begin with, like all anybody can do is complain about like, oh, we haven't gotten a new Donkey Kong Country game since, right? How dare Nintendo neglect the IP? Never mind that we've gotten plenty of re-releases of older stuff. Never mind that we're getting a remake of Mario vs. DK tomorrow, right? Never mind that we're in the movie came out and heavily featured Donkey Kong. Like it feels like Donkey Kong is bigger than ever in a lot of ways. Like Tropical Freeze was big on Switch, right? It's one of the most beloved franchise platformers on the console, right? There's no way that people will not go from Super Mario Bros. Wonder to that. Like it's one of those things that's like that has remained relevant for the past decade because it's so iconic. Like I would argue at this stage that Donkey Kong does not necessarily need a sequel, right? But that's not what these people are trying to do. They are trying to make a mountain out of a molehill and create controversy where there is none. Like Donkey Kong is the only Nintendo IP I cared about. If it doesn't get a new entry, I won't buy the Switch too. That was something I legit saw today. And to me, like that really demonstrates just the lack of appreciation for other Nintendo franchises. What about Mario games? What about Yoshi? What about like the Wario Land games or the Princess Peach game coming? You're saying that none of that matters, even though like all of that spun off from Donkey Kong, right? You're not gonna acknowledge like Mario versus DK as like a legit Donkey Kong game, right? You're not going to like wait for the Nintendo Direct before you start complaining about not having enough Donkey Kong, right? Like it was ridiculous. It felt really really forced. And what's more, I think when you compare this mindset to what happened 10 years ago, when like these same kind of people were complaining about how like, oh, the Wii U doesn't need a new Donkey Kong game. It doesn't need a game like this right now. Like when you look back on that complaining, that situation, that controversy, which I still complain about today, like I've been complaining about that a lot actually. When you look back on that, you have to wonder like where were these people when this situation was happening? Because it felt like where I was sitting, this predates the YouTube channel. Like from where I was sitting, like it felt like nobody was speaking up about how ridiculous the tropical freeze thing was at all, right? Like I remember people saying that like, "Oh, No Man's Sky, that looks way better than Tropical Freeze." I remember people saying that like Nintendo doesn't understand Western gamers. I remember people saying that this game was going to be a disappointment, that like nobody wanted 2D platformers anymore. Like complete nonsense in hindsight, right? But it was pushed, it was promoted, and like nobody cared that like tropical Donkey Kong Country had just come back after like over a decade long hiatus, right? All they cared about was that like, oh, this is taking away attention and resources that could have gone to a new Metroid Prime game, right? That was the argument back then, right? And it's the same kind of thing now, right? People are legit getting people are legit being unreasonable about what to expect from a video game company. They aren't going to endlessly print sequels to beloved games just because you ask them to. They know there's like diminishing returns and stuff like this. They have to put out like the highest quality product possible. Like you don't want Donkey Kong Country games every year, right? Because then they'll turn out like Call of Duty, like the same worlds, the same levels, the same visuals, like nothing really changes all that much, right? But by waiting a decade, we get like a completely new, unique experience, right? Playing Donkey Kong Country Returns for the first time back in the day, that was a magical experience. Like, holy, wow, they made a new 2D Donkey Kong game and it looks gorgeous. It has like all the iconic tracks. It has like these cool new mechanics like climbing and slamming and like Diddy on the back, right? Like it has like, oh, look at all these, sharks jump out of the water at you. Like it was so cool. The rocket barrel, right? Like there was so much to love about Donkey Kong Country Returns, right? Like it was such a big deal for me. It's so weird, so strange to see people like seriously act as if like not having Donkey Kong for a decade is a travesty because we've waited this long before, right? It's not that big of a deal, honestly. Like I'm happy with what I already have. I'm happy with the other games that are coming out, right? Like I'm looking forward to so much this year already, including Mario versus Donkey Kong this Friday. Like I'm looking forward to so much on Switch. Like it never even crossed my mind that Donkey Kong had gone a solid decade without like a proper new release, right? Like it's not something that I really think about. It's not something I process. Like because I have so much going on in my life that I would never even like think about that, right? Like again, I love Donkey Kong Country, right? The original is one of my favorite games of all time. I think it was like 4 or like 6 or something when I put it on the list. 6 or 7, I want to say. Like it was one of my favorite games of all time. Love the game to this day, like play it regularly. But like it's not something I need to have. Like it's just one of those things. Like why exactly do you need to have Donkey Kong Country? Like I feel like if you feel that way, as if it's like the only thing on Nintendo platforms that you care about, like I really think you need to reevaluate your perspective on video games because like how exactly are you so fixated on Donkey Kong Country specifically that you can't handle other games like in the same genre, other games like it, other games with like that art style or that visual style, like other games from the same company, from the same developer. Like, why have you not like moved on to other games? That's kind of my point here. Like, it's one of those things where like it really does not feel like the Donkey Kong is being neglected crowd is like really going to take off the way that the Star Fox is being neglected crowd did, or like the Metroid especially. Like the thing about Donkey Kong is that like in a lot of ways it's a lot more generic than those IPs, and as a result of that, like it just feels like as good as the games are, like you have alternatives. Like Super Mario Bros. Wonder just came out in October. Like play that, like what exactly are you so upset about? Like that's something I really, really want to know. Like, why exactly are you so angry about not getting a new Donkey Kong Country game right now?